City Cast Pittsburgh is supported by Fulton Commons. If you're looking for a gorgeous co-working space with lots of light and some truly wonderfully funky decor, check out Fulton Commons on the north side. The historic but very well renovated old school building is deep in the neighborhood by a park, tucked away but still super close to anywhere you want to be. They've got offices and common spaces. It's perfect for organizations or individuals, and they even have a shared food production kitchen on site. So there's lots of food-related events for their members. If this sounds like your dream co-working space, visit fultonpgh.org to request a tour. Today on City Cast Pittsburgh, if you can't bring yourself to watch the actual Super Bowl this weekend, pour one out for our Steelers. You can at least catch some four-legged Pittsburghers in another big game. The mayoral race is looking tight, at least when it comes to fundraising, and we got a special sneak peek of the glow-up still in progress at the Pittsburgh International Airport. It's Friday, February 7th. I'm Megan Harris, and here's what Pittsburgh is talking about. I'm with CityCast producers Mallory Falk and Sophia Lowe, and we're going to jump in this week with a trivia question. Woo!
Yay!
So if you're new to our show, we have a Pittsburgh news and trivia quiz every week in our Hey Pittsburgh newsletter. Some are really short, some are long. We put the long ones online at pittsburgh.citycast.fm, but we like to give yins a tease here too.
Totally.
Yeah, so big news this week was that our governor, Josh Shapiro, gave his wish list for the year as part of his annual budget address. This is a longtime tradition, and under state law, the new budget has to be in place by July 1st. But if you've been following politics in our state for a while, you may know that our legislature has failed to meet that deadline a lot in the past.
Relatable.
Yeah.
What is a deadline?
It's good to know that people at the highest levels of government are procrastinators just like me.
Is that good? Is it good?
It at least makes me feel less bad when I miss deadline. Anyway, here's the trivia question for you. How late was the latest that a budget has ever been adopted after that July 1st deadline here in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, and we have some options, although we don't actually know the answer. Do you think it's October, December, or March of the following year?
I'm going to go with December. I feel like they dragged this out until the last possible second and was like, the year is wrapping up. Now is the time to figure out the budget.
I also think it's maybe December just because I feel like getting it done right before the holidays feels like very Pennsylvania.
Wouldn't the state just fall apart if you didn't have a budget until the following March?
I mean, surprisingly, I feel like a lot about how Pennsylvania pays for things is sort of like designed for us to be late on stuff. But that's me talking. I don't know if that's how anyone else would characterize it.
Well, we are not going to tell you the answer because we actually don't know. Our wonderful quizmaster, Kevin Gavin, sent this question to us. And if you want to find the answer, you can take the actual quiz in our Hey Pittsburgh newsletter and online at pittsburgh.citycast.fm. As soon as this recording is over, I am going to race to look this up.
Same here.
And if you're curious about what's actually in the governor's proposed $51.5 billion budget this year and how it might help Pittsburgh, please stay tuned for next week. We're going to have more on that.
Yeah. Okay. So, Sophia, want to kick us off with some other news of the week? I think we are staying in Harrisburg for the time being.
Yes, in Harrisburg, but something that started from a couple of Allegheny County reps. Natalie Mihalik, she is a Republican in the Upper St. Clair area, and Arvin Venkat, he is a Democrat in the McCandless area, and they have been working on a bill they say would improve food allergy safety at restaurants, and it just passed the Pennsylvania State House this week.
This is great. This is the kind of thing I would have not really paid that much attention to in the past because I was fortunate to not be affected by food allergies. But now I have a child who has several, and I do feel a little anxious now when we go out to restaurants. So I'm really excited about this development.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have allergies, but I have sensitivities. And I'm very grateful anytime like a restaurant bothers to say I just want to, like, sometimes I opt in anyway and I eat the thing that I absolutely know my body is not crazy about. But like, I want to know. I want to know if I'm doing that to myself.
This is something that I think is helpful for people with food allergies, and people who don't have food allergies can still benefit.
Yeah.
One of the reps who introduced this, Venkat, he's an emergency physician. So he's talked about how he's seen people like land in the hospital because of food allergies. So he's been really big on, that firsthand experience.
Sophia, I haven't read up on this yet. How would this change things?
So this bill would require restaurants to have warnings about food allergies like on the menu or like in some sort of like written form. And in addition, there'd be posters like in the restaurant. So servers know about the allergens that are in like the food prep area. So to my understanding, that part would be like behind the scenes. So, servers have the information they need. And all of this would be overseen by the state's Department of Agriculture.
Yeah, I'm wondering if this is something where, like, on the menu, it would just tell you what ingredients were being used in the kitchen, or if it's something where, like, each menu item would have some kind of demarcation letting you know there's sesame in this chicken dish, for example.
As far as I can tell, like, the bill doesn't specify what allergens need to be on the menu. So it says
I feel like they need that part. Like, they need to include that part.
I was a little confused, too. Maybe it's something I missed, but I skimmed over this several times. The bill says the menu or, like, some other written document needs to tell customers about, quote, food allergens used in the retail food facility.
Okay, so, like, there's sesame in our kitchen, not necessarily there's sesame in these specific dishes.
That seems to be my read of it, although I'm sure like restaurants could be more detailed if they wanted to. I wonder if we'll get more details about implementation if this passes the Senate too. The bill also does say that customers should tell their server about any allergies they do have, which makes a lot of sense to me. Like, I'm guessing restaurants will cover common allergens like milk, eggs, peanuts, tree nuts, shellfish, fish, wheat, soy, and sesame. Those are like the big ones, but like people are also allergic to random things like kiwis.
I mean, my read on that, though, is like putting it in the language of the bill, not what allergens should be included, but that customers have some onus on this. Like, I don't know. To me, that feels like a get out of jail free card just in case like anyone files a lawsuit in the future,
I'm glad you brought that up. Like, unsurprisingly, there's been a lot of support for this bill, but a couple Republican lawmakers in the state house had some concerns about it. One thing that someone raised was whether this would open restaurants to lawsuits if they left an allergen off the menu.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
wonder,
it does seem like kind of like a thing. Like I said, like just putting that extra like line in there about like how customers still have to do the thing. Like, I don't know. That feels like some protective legalese.
I agree. Another concern was some lawmakers also brought up whether it'd make things harder for small businesses, I guess if they have to like update their menu and that kind of thing.
I feel like that's part of inventory though. Like you're already doing that part. That one holds less weight for me.
Yeah, you're adding new menu items and that kind of thing. TBD if any of these issues would hold up the bill in the Senate. This bill's actually passed the state house before, but it never got into the Senate for discussion. They didn't get around to it before the legislative session ended. Maybe they were still discussing the budget. But this bill that passed this week, it went through the House 150 to 52. So I imagine it would get through the Senate as well.
I mean, but in the meantime, there are lots of Pittsburgh restaurants, like ones around here that do list this stuff already. I feel like I see it more and more often all the time.
Totally. And one place that I think is really good for allergens is Pastoli's.
For avoiding allergens, I assume you mean.
Yeah, for avoiding allergens. They're really good.
One place you will be sure to go into anaphylaxis is.
No, this place is safe. Pastoli's in Squirrel Hill. So they do all sorts of things like pizza, salad, wings, fries, hoagies. So there's a regular menu, vegan options, and then a separate menu that is like allergen friendly and gluten free. They also say that, there's 2 different prep areas and they use like separate pots and pans to minimize cross contamination. I am assuming they are going far above and beyond what this bill would require.
That's very cool. I was not aware of this. I'm going to have to go give Pastoli some love.
And another one I have heard about, have not personally tried, is another pizza option. Mandy's in the North Hills. You can also get delivery, but they have 5 menus. So traditional, gluten-free, vegan, allergy-friendly, and dairy-free. The allergy-friendly menu does have soy. So just make sure you ask about that if you have like that sensitivity specifically.
Good tip. And Liz Fetchin also did a great roundup of allergy.
Friend of the pod, local food writer.
Yeah. She wrote a roundup of allergy-friendly restaurants for Table Magazine, and she included spots like Fig and Ash, EYV, Dianoia's, and a few more. We will have links in our show notes.
And Liz has also been on to talk about how to make like great meals for folks with allergies. Her social account is just fantastic. You can find recipes on her website, Octo Free, if you need inspiration for your own kitchen.
Today's show is sponsored by the Frick Pittsburgh Museum and Gardens and a new award-winning tour of their historic home, Clayton. It's called Gilded, Not Golden, and this is unlike any tour you might have taken there in the past because it really gets into the complexities of Henry Clay Frick's story and legacy, like his role in the Homestead Riot and his lasting impact on our environmental health. It all focuses on the year 1892, when the riot happened, when Frick was almost assassinated, and when he mourned the loss of 2 of his children. I got to go on the new tour recently, and I was surprised by the way it started. You step into that glorious entryway and hear music from the orchestrion, that giant machine that sounds like an entire orchestra. It sets a very grand vibe. But as the music played, our tour facilitator told us how this one item was worth years of wages for a steelworker. And it became clear this tour wouldn't shy away from topics like wealth inequality and labor struggles. History is complicated, and that's what the Frick wants to share with you. The Frick's new signature tour of Clayton, Gilded, Not Golden, is now open for the season. Get tour tickets and learn more at thefrickpittsburgh.org.
Ready to conquer your next big challenge? Make 2025 your medal year by signing up for the Dick's Sporting Goods Pittsburgh Marathon weekend of events. Happening May 3rd and 4th in Pittsburgh, it's more than a marathon. Choose from a marathon, relay, 5K, and more. And if you prefer walking, join the popular half-marathon walking division. The Pittsburgh Marathon isn't just about running. It's about community, celebration, and pushing yourself to new limits. Over 300,000 fans will be cheering you on through the streets of the Steel City. And the hardest step is the first one, signing up. A registration today is a commitment to your future self. Join the excitement by visiting thepittsburghmarathon.com. Use City Cast 15 to save 15% off any event registration. That's thepittsburghmarathon.com. And again, use that code, CityCast15, for 15% off any event.
So last week on the show, we talked all about the race for Pittsburgh mayor, the fact that it's heating up, the fact that we've got 2 Republican candidates facing off in the primary, which hasn't happened for almost a century here in Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. So that's, of course, former police officer Tony Moreno and Thomas West, who's a small business owner. And then on the Democratic side, we've got County Controller Corey O'Connor challenging our current mayor, Ed Gainey.
Remember, the primary is going to be on May 20th. The deadline to register to vote is May 5th. We will be drilling those dates into your brains between now and then. You will hear those a lot.
Yes, very important to exercise the democratic process. The new news this week is all about the money that's flowing into these campaigns. If you're not a follower of campaign finance, candidates are required by law to disclose how much they get and from whom. So we get those reports leading up to every election. You usually see them monthly, and you will see them a lot between now and November. But I do think there's a couple of important caveats to know if you hear us talking about it or you read about this in future. So individuals are limited in how much they can give to someone running for office. But if you give to a PAC, there are a lot fewer rules. If you've ever heard anyone complain about the Citizens United case, that was the Supreme Court case from 15 years ago, this is what they're talking about. So outside interests with unlimited money can really flood elections now. So it is a lot harder to see who is sticking their wallets into little bitty races like ours. Caveat number 2, the 2 Republicans, Moreno and West, they both announced their candidacies in January, so they are not required to disclose anything yet. We will hear more about who's donating to them in future, but for this month, we are talking about just O'Connor and Gainey because they declared last year.
Who's got more money?
Yeah. So they are basically tied.
Huh. Okay. I mean, I guess that's not too surprising considering both of them are like pretty well known in Pittsburgh. It's not like one of them's just coming on the scene.
I mean, I think it actually is surprising because Gainey has been in the race for 6+ months and O'Connor has officially been in the race for just a few weeks.
Yeah, but I mean, we kind of all saw this coming. There had been a lot of speculation about him jumping into the race, so I'm sure people were ready with their pocketbooks for the moment he announced.
Honestly.
Shout out to friend of the pod, Charlie Wolfson over at Public Source, who has done some great reporting on this. So I was checking out his article. Gainey is starting this year with $268,000 in his campaign account, and O'Connor is starting off the year with $249,000 in his. And then he's got another $62,000 in an older campaign account because he has run for office before. He holds an office right now, county controller, like we said.
So are there any interesting like individual donors so far? I still think it's so weird that Scooter Braun, aka Taylor Swift enemy number one, donated to Josh Shapiro's campaign.
Taylor Swift and Blake Lively are kind of on the outs right now, but that is a whole separate show that we don't really have time to get into.
I mean, Taylor Swift's boyfriend is playing against the Eagles this weekend. So
I'm just saying she has multiple enemies now besides the notorious Scooter Braun.
Football is relevant here, actually. I'm talking about interesting donors. So the Steelers, for one. Art Rooney, who owns the team, and some other executives have so far given about $10,000 combined, all to Mayor Gainey. Of course, Gainey is the one who's championed the whole NFL draft thing coming in 2026. A union that backed Peduto last time, Local 32BJ of the Service Employees International Union, SEIU. Gainey has hired so many SEIU people, former SEIU people, to his administration. So I'm not the least bit surprised about that either. He also got money from County Executive Sarah Innamorato, who told us last month that she is planning to vote Gainey. And the last one that I thought was funny from Charlie's article, the Duolingo CEO, Louis Van On.
I missed that one. Duolingo and Gainey TikTok.
Yeah, Duolingo, the owl is pro Gainey.
I was going to ask if Duo the Owl is going to be making some campaign stops for Gainey.
No idea. TBD on that one.
So what about O'Connor?
Several development people. If you are a real city nerd, these names will matter to you, but they're less in the spotlight for average people. Notably, one city councilor, District 3's Bob Charland. Charland is the one who proposed a different inclusionary zoning bill. We've been talking about that a lot on this show.
Because just a reminder, Gainey had his big proposal and then Charland introduced something that was a little bit different.
Yeah. And, Charlene was also pretty vocally frustrated, like the rest of council, with how Gainey handled our former police chief, Larry Scurato. That whole handshake deal that was going to allow Scurato to be a referee for college basketball games. And anyway, Scurato ended up resigning. So,
yeah, Megan, I know you said some of the development people only like the mega nerds might know, but I think a name that is a little bit recognizable here in the city is that the folks behind Walnut Capital, which has a lot of development in the city, is one of O'Connor's backers. I just think Walnut Capital, we see that name everywhere. So that's a kind of significant one.
Totally. A very, very common landlord here in the city. Public Source has way more about all of this on their website, including a really good explainer about those donor limits I was talking about, like much more in detail. And also just like how big money has played into like our last mayoral election. So definitely check that article out.
Right, because the last time around, Gainey was actually outspent by incumbent Bill Peduto and ended up winning. So money doesn't dictate everything, but it is obviously very significant.
And while we're talking about Gainey and O'Connor, they also had a debate on Sunday. So it was half an hour at Chatham. About 300 people showed up. I am glad that they put a strict time limit on this so things didn't get like unwieldy.
So we didn't go, but some reporter friends of ours did. They say that O'Connor mostly talked about the city's kind of dicey finances. So he says that we are sleepwalking back into Act 47, which means the state would have to monitor a lot of our money management. That's something that did happen here in Pittsburgh in recent memory. But it's basically like having a very strict babysitter who would have to approve a lot of our decisions. So not something people are generally excited about.
We wouldn't be buying little treats.
No, Pittsburgh gets very few treats under Act 47. 47. And it's a real chore to get out of, too. Like, we just did it. We just got out of Act 47 in 2018. Like, it was not that long ago, and we were in it for over 14 years. Gainey says that we are not in trouble. He said that to us, too, like here at City Cast when he dropped by our offices last week. He points to our bond rating, which is very good. It's basically like the city's credit score. And he is right. We are very solid there. But he says the budget is balanced, even though we have had to dip into reserves to balance it. And this year he is counting on getting money that we 100% will not be able to collect.
Yeah, like the jock tax, which is collecting money when folks from out of the city perform here, which judges have repeatedly said we cannot do. So it is interesting to see that money in the budget.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, we're just going to spend way more money on overtime for understaffed departments than he is allotted for, all of which he has acknowledged, even to us last week. Actually, we're going to play a clip. Apologies here. I was not mic'd for this, so you will hear me a little less clearly than you do, Mayor Gainey.
We're nowhere near Act 47. Nowhere.
Not scared at all.
Not at all. I told you that last time I was here.
And I'm going to keep asking.
And I told you, and you asked me, well, we're going to be in a deficit, right? And I said no.
But
and we're not.
Pull from reserves.
Well, I mean, you have to do what you have to do, but at the end of the day, a whole lot of cities had to, and they still in the red. We're not.
So this whole debate around city finances and whether or not we're in trouble, O'Connor and Gainey had this conversation on that debate stage. And O'Connor also brought up the fact that last summer, the city only had one plumber on staff. So like one person to deal with all of the water needs of the entire city.
That's
Things
so
like filling the pool,
wild.
turning on the water fountains. It's why, if you remember, there was a real delay last year in getting those water fountains up and running in the summer.
Right.
Yeah, and Gainey, for his part, he accused O'Connor of waiting until it was politically advantageous to blow the whistle on the county budget being in dire straits. That's what led to us getting that tax increase. But WESA's fact check says that's not totally true, that O'Connor had actually been warning about it for a while.
And the other big thing they talked about was inclusionary zoning. Again, this policy around creating affordable housing in the Pittsburgh.
And requiring developers to do it for projects that are 20 units or more.
Yeah, exactly. So it seems like they don't exactly see eye to eye on this. Gainey's proposal, as we've discussed on the show, wants to make it required in every neighborhood in the city. And O'Connor said, every neighborhood is different, which does sort of echo what Councillor Bob Charland has been saying too. Again, Bob Charland, who has contributed to O'Connor. But both of these candidates said they support measures to make Pittsburgh housing more affordable. I think everyone has identified that this is a really critical issue in the city right now.
Yeah, and I'm really glad they're talking about it even on something like a debate stage. Like, it's cool to see that everybody acknowledges that the rent is too high and we need to do something about it.
Absolutely. And then one more final city update. The mayor's chief of staff, he's like the right hand, Jake Wheatley, he resigned or was fired last week. Like, officially he left, but the timing kind of suggests he was asked to leave and he hasn't said what he's going to do next yet.
Can I have your attention, please? Yes, hi, Wanda Sykes here. You ever think about all the nicknames we have for breasts? Boobs, tatas, the girls, chesticles, bubbies. Heck, you might even have your own nickname for them. And yet, even though they get so much attention, they're still so ignored when it matters most. What's up with that? Well, on February 9th, tune in to see why I'm talking so much about breasts and visit yourattentionplease.com to learn more.
You found your person. Now let the Knot help you with everything else. The Knot connects you to the wedding inspo, vendors, venues, and planning tools you need to make your day totally you. Having helped plan 25 million weddings, we've got your back when it comes to every little detail like RSVPs, budgets, and more. Because your wedding comes to life with the connections that matter the most. Get started at theknot.com/audio. The Knot. Let's plan your wedding together.
So last up this week, I got to tour the new terminal building at the airport recently. I have to be honest, I was very curious about the state of this project, but I wasn't exactly excited. Like, I don't know why. Like, the airport doesn't feel like the most exciting thing to me. I don't know how y'all feel about it.
Airports are purgatory. I hate airports so much.
I mean, the reason I'm kind of excited about this is because I feel like the big preview has been that the security lines are going to be less of a nightmare once the airport gets its glow up. So that's the piece I feel most invested in.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, like, I came into it with that mindset. I left completely blown away. It is absolutely beautiful.
Convince me. Why should I like the new airport?
So the first thing to understand, and I absolutely did not get this, was the basic layout. So where the old stuff is now, where it is currently, and where the new stuff is or where it's going to be. I'm going to do my best to explain this well into your ears without the benefit of an actual map. If you do need a visual aid as you're hearing this, please check out our Hey Pittsburgh newsletter today. There's going to be a map and some pictures that'll help guide you here. But so let's imagine the entire airport property. So not the runways, just the buildings and the parking lots. It's a big horizontal rectangle, okay?
Sure.
On the left side is the current terminal where you like check a bag, where all those parking lots are. And then on the right side is the X-shaped building. So that's where you actually get on the plane.
I don't think I'd ever realized it was an X shape, but as you say it, I can kind of picture it.
If you ever look at it like from like an aerial view or a bird's eye, it is very clearly a perfect X with some little like feet on the end of one side. It's actually pretty iconic. Like the Dubai airport copied part of it. It's pretty cool.
Really? Dubai wanted Pittsburgh? Okay.
I know, right? And then the train that you take, right? Like between where you check a bag and where you actually get on the plane, that connects the two. But if you're looking at it from above ground, you don't see the train. It's underground. And there's just like a bunch of like what looks like a parking lot between the two. So you've got that rectangle, X on one side, the actual terminal and parking lots on the other side, and then this blank space in the center. Are you following me?
Yeah, and I know this design goes way back to when we were a hub for U.S. Airways because they wanted their planes and their people to have like 360 access to everything. So it's their fault that life is hard for me.
Sophia, I feel so old when you say it goes way back to when it was a hub because that was in my lifetime. I remember when we could get direct flights anywhere and everywhere. It was a beautiful time.
Yes. If you ever wonder why a thing is the way it is at the airport, it is usually U.S. Airways. We will come back to that. But the rectangle, so the big X on the right side, the new terminal is just tucked between two of those legs. So like right here in the center. So they've basically built a big new structure to just cut the distance between where you come in and where you actually get on the plane. Now it's all one space.
Right, because I know the train is going away. So this makes sense to me because you just don't have to travel that distance anymore.
Correct.
So going back to like, Mallory's security concerns, does this new design mean that security will actually be like better and faster?
Yes. So that is a huge part of it. When you come in, I also just like want to set the scene. It is pretty dramatic. So these huge, tall ceilings, and you actually see like the beginnings of the ceiling on the outside too. Lots of windows, lots of light. The ceilings look like wood paneling, which I think like both looked very
but not
modern.
in like an 80s basement
No,
way.
but it looked modern, but it kind of had a nod to that to me. Like it kind of like had like just a teeny hint of what like an old Pittsburgh bar would be, but like classy and gorgeous. All the supports scattered throughout the room are these enormous polished copper trees, which are really beautiful. And then in the ceiling, like into that wood paneling, are all of these lights that are like speckled around the room in the shape of like constellations.
Like real ones? Like I can like
not
spot
real
the Big
ones.
Dipper?
No, it's inspired by the stars, not actual stars.
I really love that they went with a nature theme. I really assumed they were going to lean all the way into a bridge theme.
Yeah, or like they could have gone like the super modern, like with the steel and the stuff like that. Although that bridge element, Mallory, does come into it, I think. So when you're coming in, you've got that super high ceiling and the lights and all of that. To your right and to your left ahead of you are going to be where the airlines are. So like where you check your bags and stuff. But just center ahead where you walk is security. So like when you open the door, when you come in, if you walk straight, that is where you need to go. And as you're walking, the ceilings begin to compress down and the constellations wave towards that center point. So they said they built it and designed it intentionally for the building to tell you where you need to go with or without any other instructions.
Right, because I don't read the signs at the airport.
That's
I
what
just
I'm
guess.
saying. They wanted it to feel like as intuitive as possible what you need to do. So like the building sort of like funnels you down. They said they were inspired by the Fort Pitt Bridge and the tunnel, like how the tunnel compresses you down and then opens up into this big, wide, beautiful city. That's kind of like where they were drawing some of the inspiration.
That's interesting because as you were describing it, I was thinking, like, as someone who has a mild fear of flying, the idea of things just like compressing as I get closer and closer to the boarding
But it's like,
area
it's super
makes me
subtle.
stressed.
It's still high ceilings. Like there's like a part where you can like look down into the security area. Like there's rails and whatnot around it, or there will be. They're not currently there. But you'll just like the light is like so, it like opens it up so much more than what I have come to expect from Pittsburgh International.
Okay, maybe the natural light will make it feel less purgatory-ish to me.
Yeah, at least that like front and beginning space. But there are some other fun things that I thought would be worth sharing. They said they've had 1,000 people on this job site so far working on this project. They've built 27 lane miles is how they phrased it. So some roads have more than one lane, obviously. They have built 7 bridges to make this thing work.
Are they going to get us there to have the most bridges in the world for that to be a true fact and not just a myth about Pittsburgh?
Well, keep in mind the airport is not in Pittsburgh City proper, so I don't think that counts.
Okay. Never mind.
The new terminal also comes with a ton of new parking. So we're going to have, it's mostly built now. You can like, if you are able to get close to the terminal, you can see it. They will have one of the largest parking garages in the entire state of Pennsylvania, with the rental car stuff all there on site.
That parking garage then sounds like the new purgatory.
Kind of, but if you're a driver, they say they're going to install this green light system, red light, green light system up top. So if you're looking for a parking spot, you just have to look for where it's got a little green light over it, and you'll know from a distance, oh, there's a spot over there. You're not just like driving forever blind, not having a clue whether there's going to be a spot for you.
Okay.
So the security question, Mallory, they said right now we have 6 lanes for like the general public, plus like those 2 alternative ones that are only open some parts of the day. Now we're going to have 12 lanes. Also, it's just going to be like,
wow.
Yeah. So double the space. It's just also going to be a lot more open. And they said it's going to be more efficiently designed. So like, we might end up with like the same or similar amounts of TSA agents to do everything, but it'll just be a lot easier to manage and look much more modern.
This is what I care about. Like constellations, beautiful, love it. Nice to have something nice to look at as you're rushing to your gate. But the security lines are my number one priority.
Yeah, just a couple other notes. The actual X part, like where you get on the plane, they're not doing like heavy construction on all of that. But if you've noticed, if you've walked through there anytime recently, they have quietly changed a lot of little stuff like the paint colors and the flooring choices, so that actually looks a little bit different than maybe it did if you were there 2 years ago or 5 years ago already. They're going to be adding green spaces, so 2 enormous ones before you go through security where you can like go sit outside and have a beer or something if you're waiting at the airport for somebody.
Interesting.
Or if you're like me and you're so scared of missing a flight that you leave yourself way too much time, this sounds like a much better place to kill time than in Hudson Books.
Yeah, and then there's going to be 2 smaller ones. If you're a nervous Nelly who needs to get through security when you're there very early.
Okay, this is actually, I'm embarrassed to say, this is just clicking for me that all this time when people have said new terminal, I thought this meant like a new area to board flights. It is. I'm just now realizing you're talking about like everything up until the gates.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is all the stuff that happens before you go through security. Plus they're building this little tunnel, like an actual Pittsburgh tunnel that you go through to get into the big X area where you get on the planes. It's super cool.
I'm ashamed that I have not understood that until just this moment.
I'm telling you, there's so much about this project I did not understand and was not appropriately excited enough about until I saw it. It genuinely is super cool. But they have a long way to go. I have never seen so much scaffolding in one spot in my entire life. Every single surface of this place still needs some amount of work. Even the stuff they pointed to and they're like, look, it's almost done. To me, it did not look almost done, even a little bit. Like there's so much to do. But they say that it's going to be open or mostly open by Q3. So like, late summer, early fall, which sounds amazing. I would love to take my latter part of 2025 trips in relative comfort. That would be great.
Okay, now let's wrap up with what we will be thinking about into the weekend. Mallory, what's on your mind?
So I'm thinking about the fact that Pittsburgh might get its first official queer landmark.
Gay building. Gay building.
Yes. Yeah, Yeah, so I don't know if you guys are familiar with Donnie's Place, which was that bar on Heron Ave in Polish Hill that opened back in the 70s and closed down a few years ago. Now it's just kind of this like abandoned building that I don't think looks super notable on the outside, but a few people have nominated it for a city historic designation because back in the day it was really like a hub for queer community and also this important outreach center in the early days of the HIV/AIDS crisis.
Yeah, I feel like I learned so much about this from Bill O'Driscoll over at WESA. He did he always does such great and thoughtful reporting, but his story about this is just fantastic. It's a really good deep dive into the history of the space and also the community that built up around it.
Yeah, that is where I'm getting a lot of this information from. So definite shout out to Bill O'Driscoll. So Donnie's Place, it went in front of the city's Historic Review Commission earlier this week. And the members there voted that a historic nomination is viable for the site. So that doesn't mean it's getting this recognition quite yet. It's just the first step in a longer process. But in a twist, a local developer and the estate of the bar's former owner have sued the people who nominated Donnie's Place for this designation.
What?
Why?
Yeah, Bill O'Driscoll just dropped a follow-up story on this, so we will definitely link that in our show notes.
I haven't seen that one.
Original reporting. Yeah, I guess they are saying that the whole motivation here is actually just to stop a planned housing development from getting built on the site. The suit says it's like impure motivations driving this. I don't know. It seems kind of messy. Like I said, we will put some links in our show notes if you want more detail on all of this.
Oh my gosh, this got spicy.
Yeah, it got much messier than I thought. It started as just like a straightforward feel-good story, I think, and it's taken a little bit of a turn. So we're going to have to keep watching what's happening. We will definitely update all of you. But if Donnie's Place does get this city designation, it would be the first historic landmark in Western Pennsylvania that's specifically recognized for its place in queer history. But yeah, a little more complicated of a story, I guess, than it initially seemed. So we will keep watching.
Yeah, I've got a couple. Number one is an update to this U.S. Steel drama. President Trump is meeting with the Prime Minister of Japan at the White House today. Just a couple of things to know. The United Steelworkers Union filed a motion to dismiss the lawsuit that U.S. Steel and Nippon had filed against it.
Japan-based Nippon Steel, which is why the Prime Minister of Japan's meeting is significant.
Well, yeah. We'll see if they talk about it, if they tell us that they talked about it. We'll see. There was an explosion at the Clairton Coke Works this week. 2 workers went to the hospital and they had to shut down the battery for a little bit. The Allegheny Front did some really great reporting about it. So we'll link that in the show notes. And then my other one is a little more straightforward. There is an official winner in the county's I Voted sticker contest
For that primary on May 20th.
If you need any incentive to show up at the polls, it is to get a specially designed sticker.
Yeah, Pittsburgh sticker. So the top half says, I voted, your standard patriotic red, white, and blue. It's got a little check mark in the V. The bottom half is black and gold and says Inat. So I voted Inat. There's a city skyline between. It was designed by a 10th grader at Mount Lebanon High School. So congratulations to Molly.
So I know in journalism, it's typically like frowned upon to share who or what you voted for. But I was really pulling for the pickle sticker design. No shade to Molly. This one is fantastic, too. I love the Pittsburgh representation, but I did love that cute little pickle design.
Maybe they'll take that design for Picklesburg.
Yes.
Well, I will be thinking about dogs this weekend because while the Steelers may not be in the Super Bowl, local puppies are repping us in the Puppy Bowl, the premier event for me personally. So we have 3 puppies from Paws Across Pittsburgh and 1 from Animal Friends in the Puppy Bowl. So you can catch them on Animal Planet at 2 p.m. on Sunday. Pre-game show starts at 1 p.m. And if you want to celebrate in person, meet some celebrities, Paws Across Pittsburgh is doing an event in Brackenridge on February 16th. So they're hosting this party from 1 to 4. You can meet the dogs, plus there's bingo, raffles, snacks. It sounds really fun.
I was surprised to see that the dogs will be on opposing teams. Some of them are on Team Fluff and some of them are on Team Rough.
That means we're going to win no matter what.
There is competition involved.
I understand there's competition involved in the Puppy Bowl. What I meant was I thought all of the Pittsburghers would be on a team together. But I guess what this does mean is that, no matter what, Pittsburgh will come home a winner.
That's all for today here on City Cast Pittsburgh. Our music is by Benji. He did not take home a Grammy, but he is still a winner in our hearts. Mallory Falk is our executive producer. Sophia Lowe produced the show. Elizabeth Kama, Francisco Kilgore, and Selena Cia Reynolds all helped out this week too. Francesca DeBecco writes our newsletter, and I am your host, Megan Harris. We will be back on Monday with more news from around the city. Have a great weekend, y'all.
I truly did not until this moment understand what was terminal. I always think terminal means like where the planes.
Well, yeah, like it's complicated. Like somebody said something about like the gates, and like the airport people behind me were going, concourses, it's the concourse. And I'm just like, y'all, nobody understands this terminology.